right. Well, welcome everyone to my session on AIM and how AIM, which stands for the Accelerative Integrated Methodology, rapidly develops proficiency in both immersion and core French classes. And I'm just so thankful to Angela for inviting me to be here today. It's my absolute pleasure to meet with you guys. So let's get started. My name is Wendy Maxwell, and I am the creator of the methodology that's called AIM, which we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to give lots of examples and a little bit of background when we begin. But a little background on what I do. I created the materials, all the resources for AIM over the course of a number of years. And I won a few awards for that one. So if you're interested in reaching me, you can do that at this email. And love to know more about the teachers here. So I think most of you are primary or elementary core and immersion teachers and in Ontario. Is that right, Angela? Most come from
We have quite a few from Ontario, but we do have members from coast to coast. We've got some in BC,
Wonderful.
all the
Oh,
way to Newfoundland. We have some way up north near Nunavut, and we have, I think, two members from the States right now. So
oh, how wonderful.
yeah,
Well,
we're growing. We're growing.
broad reach. How fantastic. Well, great
Thanks.
on getting this wonderful community together.
Thank you.
So, AIM, as I mentioned, which stands for the Accelerative Integrated Methodology. So, AIM is highly accelerative. It rapidly gets students up and running in the language. And I think that's very, very important because what I've found when I started teaching was that my students were kind of distracted, especially the primary ones, and even the older ones too. They weren't understanding what was going on, and what they needed was something to latch onto when starting the language. So everything I do in AIM is the purpose of it is to make sure that the language is acquired as rapidly as possible. So I'm going to show you how that goes today. And then it's integrated because I began my career as an immersion teacher for I think 5 years with Toronto as back then it was called Toronto Board of Education. I was an immersion teacher down in at Dewson Public School and also Winchester, and I love teaching immersion. Um, and I found that I could use French with those kids. And I'd just been living in Quebec, and I was so passionate about speaking in French and developing the French language. And it was okay, although actually it was a very bad teacher when I started off. I passed probation at the beginning. I was so bad. But I was passionate about the kids and having them speak only in French. So I sort of managed to do that. But I did find that when I taught French through another subject area, as we do in immersion, through math, science, social studies, language arts, and everything else, it was a wonderful way to engage students. And so, what I did when I moved to teaching core French is that I applied those same principles. And when I moved to teach core French, it was just 30 minutes a day of French, so pretty limited. Um, but I wanted to teach through another subject area, so I chose an arts and literacy based approach for the teaching of French. So I'm going to talk a lot about that later, but just to let you know, we in AIM, whether it's core immersion, I've also taught AIM through a bilingual program. It's also used in francisation, in francophone boards to get students up and running. It is integrated with other subject areas. So we teach literacy skills, choreography, music. We teach the writing process, the editing process, book publishing process, even. So you'll see a lot of that today. And then it's a methodology because it is a system. So although AIM developed by, well, first I decided what vocabulary I wanted to teach. Then I decided, I created some stories and then ended up being plays for the kids. And then the gesture approach. We all it all of those individual aspects of AIM work well individually, but it is a methodology, and all those component parts work very synergistically and powerfully together. So when I began teaching immersion, I as I mentioned, I was not a great teacher, but my passion was French and helping the kids actually acquire the language. When I moved to teaching core French, I really realized that after 7 years of sitting in French class for 30 minutes every day, my grade five students, who were the oldest ones that I was given, could not speak at all. They couldn't read well, they couldn't write a sentence, much less a story. They certainly didn't understand me when I spoke to them in French. So I was very frustrated because coming from immersion, my kids were better, but then again, I had them all day. Now, but I couldn't believe that after 30 minutes every day in over 7 years, the kids weren't able to communicate. I was going, what is going on? Because as a French teacher, as a French learner myself in high school, I picked up French pretty quickly. And what I realized later on when I talked to my professor, uh, she and I asked her when I tried to do a comparative study of AIM and other programs in core French. I said, where are the studies of proficiency in core French? And she just said, well, there aren't any studies because there isn't any proficiency, but don't quote me on that. This was
Oh,
one of the major researchers that I won't even tell you where, but or who.
oh,
I promised I wouldn't quote her on that.
yes.
Anyway, so I realized, a lot of us as language learners, if we do well at school, we kind of think, well, the way we learned it is a way that everyone's going to learn it. But really, in fact, some studies have shown that only about 4% of the population actually learn that way. So um, I knew I needed to find something. And so I love this quote, what counts in a classroom is not what the teacher teaches, it's what the learner learns. We can, and language teachers work so hard on making sure that the students are learning. But if they're not learning, then that's really a shame. So my whole goal in developing AIM was to make sure that students actually learn something. So I'm going to show you just out of interest. I know you don't teach all these languages, all of you, but just out of interest, seeing what AIM looks like in different parts of the world in different languages.
Everyone
Will
will
do
do
the song.
Non, ta grand-mère. Parce que c'est la grand-mère de Chaperon Rouge et la mère part à Chaperon Rouge. Alors c'est ta grand-mère. Tout le monde est fantastique.
La classe toma. Yo tomo. Una persona importante o importante, importante. Importante. Entonces, yo no hablo con tú. Okay.
Contigo.
Oh, sí.
我要找一个歌手，小鸡住在农场里，以前小鸡出上学，一个小国家在小鸡的桌上。怎么了？哎呀，天塌了，天塌了！怎么了？你去哪里？天塌了，天什么？
Okay, so just a little overview of aspects of AIM in those videos. And Angela, you can hear it okay?
Oh, it's perfect. It's
Oh,
perfect.
good,
That's
good.
all smiles. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's sweet to see how, the kids in different languages learning as well. And as you can see in the videos, that we do a lot of work with gesturing and songs and so on, which I'm going to go over today. So as you know, the main goal for AIM is the development of proficiency, as I've mentioned. And I love it that the can-do statements of the CFR fully align with what we're doing in AIM as well. It is a comprehensible input-based approach, so a lot of the strategies we use are there to make sure that from the moment they first hear the word, they're understanding it.
Yeah.
Because the faster kids can understand, the faster they'll build that foundation of language proficiency upon which we can then continue to build for the students. AIM, as I mentioned, has a content and language integrated learning focus. So you might have heard of CLIL, where it's an approach where you teach language through another subject area. And of course, primary goal to develop authentic proficiency. I've put down a few notes on how AIM aligns with the CFR because I know in Ontario in particular, but also in ACTFL in the United States and other guidelines across Canada are heavily focused and promote the tenets of the CFR. So both AIM and the CFR are there to develop authentic proficiency. Our goal is to do this, to create a plurilingual profile for students. Both AIM and the CFR focus on or promote the creation of curriculum content that focuses on the can-do statements. The CFR doesn't create curriculum, but they do promote that a curriculum that aligns with the age, interests, and needs of students, of course. And the AIM and the CFR view the importance of, and AIM certainly does, develop quality resources that ensure successful language acquisition. And also the importance of supporting teacher education and training, which we continue to do. And as I was mentioning to Angela earlier, continue to morph into different ways to really help teachers in different situations and times of life and other responsibilities to get access to training that will really support them to do well in the classroom. And so AIM is used widely all over the world, mostly in Canada, the United States, Australia, and the Netherlands, but to a lesser degree, as you saw in some of those videos, other countries as well. So AIM started, we were just talking about that earlier, in around 2004. Officially, I started developing it took about 10 years to develop the methodology as it is now. I continue to work on it as well, but it took about 10 years to develop. Developed it in my classroom in Ontario. And it started in an independent school and then went to other independent schools in Ontario. And then now, of course, it's in many more public schools around the world, mostly in public schools. In core and immersion and for francisation, there are francophone boards that use AIM at the early levels, kindergarten, grade 1, for students whose parents have not spoken to them in French, although they send them to francophone boards because they are francophones and are able to do that. So they're presented with what we would see typically in an immersion classroom where many students don't speak the language yet. And so it's used in those programs, and I have taught it in bilingual program as well out here in BC. So a large percentage of schools in Australia and the Netherlands, and what I'm thrilled to say is that a recent study out of the Netherlands, where AIM is used widely, and they studied these classes, that students in the AIM classes outperform students in the other most popular programs in the country and in all language skills. And this research paper was voted the best research paper of the year in the Journal of European Second Language Association. Well, thanks, Angela.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was nice to see. There's a researcher that had been just working on, learning about AIM and working with the teachers there in the Netherlands. And then she did her thesis, her doctoral thesis on it, and it was published, there. So it was nice to see that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so and AIM students have won awards and competitions in other areas in the United States as well. So I'm going to go over the key components. There are many other components, and I have a link that I can share if you want to see all the brain-based research that supports AIM. But I'm going to just talk about these 5 elements of AIM that are sort of most visible and most overarching. So we use gestures to help students understand. So that's that main comprehensible input aspect, but we have many more as well, but that's sort of most visual. And I'll go into all of these a little more in detail on the next few slides. So we use gestures to help students understand. I did a lot of work developing what we call the pared down language, which is for the most part a high frequency vocabulary, words that are selected to make sure that students develop a strong foundation of high frequency words. And then we contextualize those words through stories, which become plays and theater pieces, and then connecting those with music and choreography and then eventually helping students do creative drama. Taking those stories allows us, and using them and really working in depth with those stories allows us to then work on a series of scaffolded language manipulation activities that help students be very successful in the development of their written language skills. And our main goal is to help students transfer to spontaneous communication, both oral and written. And a lot of this happens, is supported during the whole class activities and takes place during the partner group activities. So the gesture approach. What happens in an AIM classroom is, for the most part, the teacher is gesturing all the words that the teacher wants to communicate to the students, whether it's, something spontaneous, a pencil falls on the floor. Oh, regarde, le crayon tombe ici. And the teacher is gesturing that, the students are saying the words. So when the teacher is gesturing anything that he or she is communicating, when the whole class is sitting with the teacher for 1/2 to 2/3 of the class time, the students are seeing and hearing and saying, and sometimes I ask the kids to gesture as well. They're kinesthetically embedding vocabulary. So what is happening? All this vocabulary, every single word is stored in different parts of the brain simultaneously. And this makes recall and comprehension very quick and very easy. And so even after the summer, I found that, the first day back at school in September, the kids, it was like yesterday was the last day of school. We just jumped right back in, very little degradation of the language or decay. And so it's really a really great thing to help students produce the language constantly. So from the moment a student enters an AIM classroom, they're basically speaking for the whole class time, because during whole class activities, the teacher's gesturing and the kids are talking. During partner group activities, the teacher is just walking around and the kids are interacting as they write. So just very quick excerpts of students who are not in an AIM classroom and just comparing them with AIM. So this Daisy. So the first one is where students are not in an AIM classroom.
Aujourd'hui, je suis très excitée parce que la semaine prochaine, je vais visiter mon ami qui habite à Winnipeg. C'est vrai, je suis née à Winnipeg et tout.
So that's, great. The teacher is talking and giving some, just ideas about what she's doing this weekend, connecting, sharing with the kids, all in French, target language only. That's great. Kids are listening. We don't know if they understand, but they're, so a lot of good things happening there, but that's not an AIM classroom. This is how it would look in an AIM classroom.
Habite à Winnipeg.
Pardon?
Winnipeg.
Excellent.
Alors, je vais
Continuez.
maintenant. Est-ce que tout le monde sait ou ne sait pas que je suis né à Winnipeg? Je sais. C'est vrai. Je suis né là-bas. Et j'ai aussi des amis que je peux visiter.
Yeah, so the difference is that the kids are doing the talking. So the shy students who would never speak are speaking every bit as much as the strong students who are all, and more outgoing students who want to speak all the time. The weaker students are getting tons and tons of repetition and visual input and practice and support from peers around them. So there's a lot of there's a real community of that is developed in an AIM classroom around the speaking. So let's have a look at some just the very beginning of an immersion, primary immersion maternelle classroom. Oh, they're going to get a nice biscuit there if they
Wow, that's not a bravo.
That's sweet. But you can see that the teacher is just communicating spontaneously rather than saying it and have the kids listen. And we don't know if, I mean, we still may not know if they understand, but they're following along, they're speaking, they're practicing development of accent, they're practicing syntax, they're even practicing grammar because you probably noticed "ne" was born and past tense accent aigu. We have a lot of, within this pared down language combined with the gestures, we embed a lot of grammar as well. And students in an AIM class develop grammar in a very different way than it's an inductive approach, a three-step inductive approach actually to the teaching of grammar that really helps children deeply understand the grammar of the language like a first language learner would. So the pared down language. This is high frequency functional vocabulary that students really need, I feel, to develop a solid foundation for proficiency. And it's studies that I've studied through action research in my class with my students. I looked up high frequency language studies and came up with a vocabulary that I think works well for this purpose. But it's not just high frequency. I also help students acquire the verbs, which of course are some of the most more difficult things to acquire, in a very simple way. So I also simplify the language for rapid comprehension. So in French, the way we do this is I choose the regularized stem and I apply that to the subjects that work with it. So we have, let's say, pouvoir, vouloir, devoir, savoir, all very high frequency verbs, but difficult to conjugate because the stem changes and then you have to add the ending on nous and vous. So I sort of put nous and vous to the side and then I just use the third person singular form. So we have veut and va and peut and doit and aime and regarde and écoute and écrit and sait as in je sais. So using that, I can use it with je and tu and il and elle and on and tout le monde and la classe instead of nous and vous. And of course, we know that francophones often use on anyway instead of nous. So it's a simple way to have the students enter into the language successfully, speaking correctly, but in a simple way. And of course, I use cognates. And because AIM is very verb centered, I had to really ensure that learning all these verbs was very easy. I feel that verbs are at the core of language proficiency. We can say lists of nouns like thematic approaches offer us, but it's the verbs to talk about what we're doing that are really important. So what AIM does is it flips the typical linguistic power structure where the teacher has all the power, even if the teacher doesn't speak the target language very well, they're still there to teach the students and have more linguistic power than the students. And what the teacher has to do is adjust the words down that he or she wants to use to communicate with the students to reflect the students' knowledge. So making sure that they're selecting the words from the pared down language that they know how to gesture and using those words only to communicate. So of course, in the kits, we flood the teacher's learning with a lot of words up front because you need a certain number of words just to survive in the target language using those words. But it really, I don't like the word force, but it kind of forces the teacher to use circumlocution, to use the words that they know the students know already. So we're constantly repeating those words over and over again and giving the students a chance to acquire them and helping them to acquire them very quickly. So, that's something we do. And then the AIMS literacy approach, that's, I think, really key to the contextualization of the vocabulary and the engagement of the students. We do some theater and drama, and you certainly don't have to be a drama teacher at all. I can't even memorize my own plays, much less even dramatize something else. But I think that kids naturally are, even adults of any age kind of love getting into character, and they just naturally do. And speaking in the voice of another character is also really less intimidating sometimes when you're starting to learn a new language than, speaking in your own voice. So it sort of helps segue to that freedom with the language. And so I worked a lot with David Booth in my undergraduate when I was doing my BEd at University of Toronto and then MA at Oise U of T. And he said that the best literacy approaches are not ones where you try to teach as many stories as possible, but rather to hone in on one. And what his terminology was to go in, out, and around a story, delving deeply into the story. And I feel that although he worked in English first language and literacy programs, and he spoke all over the world about his beliefs in developing good literacy programs, I think what he was saying applies even more so to a foreign or second language learning environment because the kids have no language. And the story offers them this context, this sort of rich language through the story that they come to know intimately well. And it gives them so much security and predictability, which I think is sometimes lost. Well, it was in my class, lost on the children who don't understand what's going on and then they become distracted, or the older ones feel it's a waste of time, they're not learning, they don't know what's going, and then you get the discipline issues. And I found that when I started using AIM, it was like a camera or a telescope was just coming into focus. The kids now were understanding. So I love this quote by David Booth, who said, "Children new to a language find in a story context for understanding. It's not word lists that command their attention, but the lives of characters that fill the tales they read or listen to." And how painful it must be for those children alien to a language to sit day after day without feeling connected to the classroom, connected to what's happening in the classroom. And yet through storying, how quickly they enter the activity, making sense of what is happening, building their own versions, listening, telling, retelling, talking about, reflecting upon, responding. So that's what we do in AIM. So I'm going to show just a few excerpts, very, very short excerpts, so you get just an idea of what I'm talking about when I talk about the plays that we do. So this one, I often start with the younger ones, especially with something that's familiar, a story that's predictable. So this one is La Poule Ma Boule that we use in kindergarten or grade 1, and sometimes in grade 2 for core or immersion.
Voici l'histoire de la poule ma boule. La poule ma boule habite à la ferme. Elle marche et marche. Tout à coup, un gland tombe sur la tête de la poule ma boule. Aïe! Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? La poule ma boule regarde le ciel. Oh non! Le ciel tombe! Le ciel tombe!
So she runs off and she finds all these other characters, and eventually, well, you know the story and what happens next. And we do have an original story, which is kind of based on The Boy Who Cried Wolf, called Le Garçon qui joue des tours, for elementary immersion students as a startup, step 1 kit, or for junior high core.
Viens, Christine, on va parler avec la cousine Amélie. Je sais qu'elle aime beaucoup son petit chien Pico. Regarde ça.
Je regarde mon frère. Tout à coup, il prend le chien. Qu'est-ce qu'il va faire? Ce n'est pas bien.
Amélie! Amélie! Viens vite, ton chien Pico est perdu.
Oh non! Qu'est-ce que je fais? Viens, mon chien! Viens, Pico!
Regarde Amélie, elle est très triste.
Henri, ce n'est pas gentil.
Mais c'est amusant.
So he loves to tease his family members and friends, and his younger sister is the foil, and she kind of teaches him a very important lesson. So, it's a longer story. It is still repetitive, just like the other step 1 kits, but but it deals with a theme that's more appropriate for older ones. And here we go, some songs and raps. This is our rap d'entrée for the younger students for elementary.
La classe commence en français. Ouvre la tête, enlève l'anglais. Je mets l'anglais dans ma poche, c'est vrai. Et je parle seulement en français. Je mets l'anglais dans ma poche, c'est vrai. Et je parle seulement en français. Hey! Hey!
Yeah, so that's our entry rap because our goal in all of our language programs, whether it's immersion or core French or bilingual programs, francisation, is to maintain the target language. Our goal is target language only, no matter how often you have your class and of course, we can't do that unless you're supported with certain, techniques and strategies which we offer you in AIM. And here is another song and dance related to one of the stories. All stories have choreographed dances. The WAME lends itself well to performance at the end of the kit. After 50 hours, the kit is a 50-hour unit of instruction. They're all ready because you've practiced throughout the whole kit, just naturally as part of the program, the methodology, to perform at an assembly or film your students or have a café théâtre, which I explain in the kits for parents or to other classes. There's so much flexibility these days with all these things handy to film. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And a few more songs I use these with the little ones, the videos with the little ones, but don't typically use the videos when I'm using these particular songs and raps with older students because they're just little kids in the videos.
Bonjour la classe. Bonjour la classe. Commence maintenant. Et on doit parler en français tout le temps. J'aime la classe beaucoup et ça c'est vrai. C'est amusant de parler seulement en français. Quand une marionnette est dit, maintenant je colorie. Je coupe et après ça je dis, regarde ça, j'ai fini. Maintenant, tout le monde dit cette histoire. Oui, oui, oui. Dis les mots très, très fort. Et tourne la page et lis encore.
So we have many, many, many raps that kind of encapsulate the vocabulary of any given activity in AIM in that rap. So then we take the story and we help students to learn to manipulate the language independently. Of course, it's one thing to learn a song and a story and just learn it well or even memorize it, but you're not going to develop proficiency with that. You need to take that and then work with it and learn to manipulate the language independently. So we have a series of language manipulation activities that start very simply based on the story and become increasingly more challenging. And because AIM is a literacy approach, we want students to be writing stories. So at the end of every kit, we start with a story retelling, and then from every kit from step 2 and beyond, we do a retelling and an extension. And that's the main focus of our literacy approach. And all of this has the goal to make sure that students are constantly speaking spontaneously in the language and learning to write creatively. So I'm going to show you some examples in a little bit. But for now, just a few, just to let you know that many different educators all over the world have implemented AIM and found it helpful in their context. This teacher or professor at Southern New Hampshire University used AIM actually to teach adults, immigrants coming into the country, English. And so he used our adult English kit to teach AIM. And we'll have a look at a few others here.
If I had to choose, one thing that distinguishes AIM classrooms from more typical core French classrooms, it's the level of emotional investment that kids have in the process and the fun that they're having. And again, that's fuel that drives the learning process.
So they're very keen and they can apply. I guess the most remarkable point is that they can apply everything or a lot of what they've learned in a context, in everyday life context.
And what we didn't anticipate would happen was that students in grade 4 with a sibling that it was in grade 7 were going home at night and actually speaking French in sentences at the dinner table. And the feedback was very impressive from the parents that all of a sudden their kids were having conversations that they couldn't follow in French at the dinner table.
It's nice that the kids, they take it out of the classroom and make it the language part of who they are and are really proud of it. It's just so wonderful to see. And
I think that's what was so special, especially in the core French, because I didn't use it as much in immersion, but just that connection that they had with taking it home, right? Just the extensions just seem so huge for it.
Yes, yeah, it is when you've really done something wonderful for the students when they make and give them a real gift of language, when they make it part of who they are and feel they can take it out and use it anywhere. It is just really, really lovely to see. Yeah. So when students are working during the partner group activities, of course, you saw whole class activities where the teacher's gesturing and the students are speaking. In partner group activities, we want students to be speaking as they write, so they continue to develop their oral language skills in tandem with the written. So I'll just show just a part of this video where so you see what it looks like.
Oui. Il n'y a pas de mettre en salle et déchirer.
Est-ce que ça, c'est la même histoire, mais dans les mots différents? Oh oui. Dans les mots différents?
Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire?
Est-ce que tu fais en partenaire?
Saute!
Beaucoup. Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Et très pauvre.
Est-ce que tu fais ça?
Est-ce que c'est sans? Non, ça c'est juste une maison.
Tu fais ça?
Lui commence à marcher dans la forêt. Il espère trouver une amie dans la forêt. Elle a demandé
En train de... Oh, excellent. En train de...
So the kids are working in partners, so we maximize language by having students, not work in groups of 3 or 4 if possible. And they're discussing as they write. So an AIM classroom is a very loud place. The kids are talking together all the time. But if they're not communicating constantly during that very short period of time, and I only now currently have been teaching just 1 hour a week, if the kids are not talking constantly and applying what they're learning during whole class activities, then the proficiency development will be very slow or will never happen. So that's an important aspect of AIM. So what AIM does well is primarily develop those oral language skills first, because I find that they are a little more challenging to develop, or when I first started teaching, they certainly were. And then secondly, if we can develop those oral language skills well, the written language skills will follow, as long as students are able to write in their first language. Which is, of course, what I always depended on the classroom teacher to help me out with the development of their literacy skills in English, because if they're writing in English, they can write in French. We share the same alphabet, mostly the same sounds, and so that's what I was seeing, that it wasn't difficult to have students start to write the story if they could speak well enough. So this is an example of the first step of creative writing that we offer in our Step 1 kits. And from then on, but we sort of challenge them as we go through the kits further and further. Our expectations rise. But in the Step 1 kit, students start to write. And there's a lot of teacher modeling that goes on with the whole class to see what the process is. And then the students go off and write a different retelling with a partner. on their own. And so this is Le Chat et la Lune, which is a step one kit that I used with my grade ones. This was this student's first year of French after 80 hours of instruction. Now, the purpose of this story of the whole process of story retelling is to help students develop an ability for circumlocution, which we all have to do when we go into a place where people don't speak our language and we're learning the new language. We have to use only the words that we have to be able to communicate. If they can't speak in English and I'm going to, China and I know a little bit of Mandarin, I have to only use the words in Mandarin that I know, maybe with a lot of pointing and other things. But what this trains the students to use circumlocution, a very important skill. So they have to retell a story that they know very well, but they have to retell it without repeating any sentence directly from the original story. So they can embellish it. And we do a lot of work, and I model this for teachers how to do this. But they are so proud after writing a full-length story of, say, 4 or 5 pages, or even 3 pages in grade one. They're so proud of the work that they do. And it still is their story because they wrote it, but it's scaffolded. It's based on the story that they've come to know very well. This is an example of first grade 2 students in Immersion, who this was their first year of AIM, doing Boucle Violette, writing a retelling of Boucle Violette, which is a step 2 kit that is used in core French and Immersion. And then we have, up to grade 7, of course, you're going to see something very different. And this is after 75 hours of instruction at the end of the first year of French. By grade 7, you're going to see, because they're already writing in English, much more than a grade 1 or even grade 2, we're going to see a lot more detail, a lot more punctuation, correctness, and spelling, focus on spelling. So, we can get much longer stories from those older students, as we can see here in this one, which was, I think, about 10 pages or so.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and we give students a lot of time. So we work on a story retelling over the course of 3 weeks. And I give them 10 to 15 minutes every day. And they usually write about 1/3 of a page to 1/2 a page every day. And over the course, you can imagine how much you can write if you write that much a day. Over 10 classes, they end up, writing quite a bit. And I remember a teacher or parent of the grade 1 student that I had who'd written, fairly long story, had said, "Oh, my child doesn't write that much in English." Well, it's just what we do it's not because they are better in French at writing, it's just that I give them lots of time. AIM is a very deep learning approach. I want students to really get what I'm teaching them and have tons of practice with what I'm teaching them. So, they know the story well, and so I just give them lots of time and they retell it in their own words. Now, the next step story that we have that occurs typically starting in step 2 kids, but in this case I'd had the kids for 2 years because they started in kindergarten. I had them do an extension as well. So the extension is Qu'est-ce qui se passe après? So they start where the story ends. It usually is unresolved, like in Les Trois Petits Cochons, the wolf runs out of the house after he falls in the soup, and the pigs are all happy, but the wolf isn't happy, he hasn't eaten. So, qu'est-ce qui se passe après? So this is a couple of my grade 1 students who wrote this. Après que le loup sort de Les Trois Petits Cochons, il va à la maison et dort et se réveille et marche à la place. Il court et marche. Monsieur Loup est très fou et content. So these 2 students, Avni and Raquel, were writing this story together. Avni had been in my senior kindergarten French class for 30 minutes a day, and then Raquel had just come into grade 1 that year, and again for 30 minutes a day. So, il est très content et le loup frappe à la porte de la fille amie. Il dit à son ami, est-ce que tu veux danser avec moi? Oui, je veux, je aime toi. L'ami dit, est-ce que tu veux aller à ma maison? Le loup dit, oui, oui, je veux. Le cochon est ici, dit le loup. J'ai
Oh,
peur, dit la fille amie. So, so they go off and they, je veux faire une fête, dit la fille amie. Le loup dit oui, oui, oui. So you can see a lot of spelling from English. They're just, and we would never be able to see a story like this if the students weren't speaking, saying
no.
the story orally. This is direct oral to written application. And of course, they've got, 4.5 hours a day out of 5 in English. And just
Mhm.
so they don't have a lot of practice with French spelling. Some of them pay more attention. Like the first student, her spelling actually was very good, but others, just like many students in primary classes, they just have inventive spelling and create it, for a little while. So, love ça, c'est délicieux here. That's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I love seeing their writing.
Very sweet. Yeah.
Oh,
So, and then as proficiency improves, we want students to talk about the language in the language. So I'll show this little excerpt.
Corrige les erreurs. Le numéro. Tout le monde lit avec madame. 1, 2, 3. Est-ce que tu peux chanter avec il? Qui voit une faute dans la phrase numéro 1? Oui.
Chante doit être chanté parce que après peu, c'est l'infinitif.
D'accord. Tout le monde, on va répéter la règle. Et c'est la règle numéro 1. Tout le monde avec madame. Après à comment, pour ou de, doit, aime, veut et aussi peut. C'est mon va où je vais, c'est l'infinitif qu'on doit utiliser. Fantastic.
So you're seeing the third step of our inductive approach where I've encapsulated into a rap all of the words that signal the infinitive form. So it's useless if students aren't saying things like je veux faire ça ou est-ce que tu peux donner le crayon, but when they're making those errors, then we have the rap to remind them of when the infinitive is used. So I have another 5 minutes or so. Would that be
oh,
okay?
for sure. Oh, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so if you're interested at all in learning more about the methodology or how to implement it, we do offer a lot of different things to support you. So we have kits, and the kits we have various options as well, like digital versions or hard copy versions. But all the kits come with a program guide that's sort of an overarching explanation of the methodology and what's in the kit. We also have the teacher's guide, which has 85 lessons that take you from start to finish with the entry routines and what numbered activities you could do in each lesson, and what partner group activities would be appropriate to use in the lesson, and what exit routine or leaving routine. And with little spaces for design your own lessons throughout to catch up, and anyway, it's just really, and it shows you an intended flow and how the teacher's guide and the student activities sort of work together, which wasn't in the original kits, but it seems to be something that was needed originally. So here are the partner group activities. So these are the black line masters that you have to photocopy, and sort of these link with the whole class activities, because in the whole class you model these partner group activities and then send them off, this kids off to do it with a partner independently. So, all of that is explained in the 85 lesson plan. And then you have big books for the little ones in hard copy and online and projectable, but for the older ones, just projectable. Posters and image cards, again, hard copy and projectable on our portal. Assessment activities books. If you need to do additional assessment, I don't find it's really necessary because of the amount, the quantity of production that we get from the kids. But if you're required to give a quiz or a test, these are discrete tests. End of kit little site passages and tests and all, but I think the most valuable thing in here is the student self-assessment. So we do have assessment for as and of learning in here, but we also have student self-assessment and even parent reflection / assessment, for which we always had in our kits. But the one thing that's new is the student self-assessment as well. So they there are can-do statements in French, and they can sort of reflect on their own learning. As part of the assessment book, we also have DELF-like tests. They're not approved by DELF or the CFR, but they are similar to what DELF offers in terms of overall language proficiency. It's not related to any kit, but we ask the students to work to show us what they know in oral production and oral interaction, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And there are 3 different levels. And we have our portal, our online portal, in which all of our digital resources are housed. All of the basic kit portal contains the posters, as I mentioned, all of the videos of the songs, the raps, the dances, the play gestured and acted, all of the gestures themselves in the order they're presented in the kit, and an e-reader of the story read aloud with highlighted text. And then you have 32 complimentary logins that you can hand out to any students who you wish like to have it. And you can see what the students have watched on the portal as well. You can see how many times they watched everything. We have digital workbooks on the portal. We have teacher's guides that are digital if you wish them. We have many, many things also that you can have on your portal. And this is the kit chart. So I did mention La Poule Ma Boule, which is the startup kit for the little ones, for kindergarten to grade 2. We also have an immersion version of the kit for immersion, especially for immersion teachers, written by Anne Chiasson. She has written 2 additional teachers' guides, and I'll talk about them in just a moment. And then we have additional Step 1 kits, whether you're starting like with age 8 or 9-year-olds. Le Chat et la Lune would be nice. Les Trois Petits Cochons, broadest scope of
yeah.
Enjoy.
I'm seeing kindergarten all the way up.
Exactly. Yeah. So since we've developed the new editions, Les Trois Petits Cochons is no longer too appropriate for immersion, just because of what am I trying to say? Sort of the expectations of the written. So the primary kits are really good for the little ones. We have, shorter questions and shorter activities, a lot of drawing and a lot of drawing lines and underlining, much more appropriate for the little ones.
Yeah.
Les Trois Petits Cochons. But yeah, it was used when it was the only kit right through kindergarten to grade 8.
Everybody did it.
I know. And then we have Le Garçon qui joue des tours. I showed you the excerpt for junior high, really. And Salut mon ami, and Une table pour deux for high school or even adult. So I mentioned the primary immersion starter package with La Poule Ma Boule and Le Petit Chat cherche une famille. And these are the 2 additional teachers' guides that we have written by Anne. They're just fantastic. Du geste à la parole à la maternelle d'immersion, which can also be used in grade 1. It's a series of activities, activities that she offers for you to show you how to use AIM to teach math and science and social studies and other additional language arts and art, and all these activities for centers. They're just wonderful, and they're all based around the theme of the kit, La Poule Ma Boule, or the second step kit, Le Petit Chat cherche une famille. It's really lovely resource for teachers in immersion. It just gives you everything you need to in all your matière. Of course, you can supplement it if you wish, of course, but it gives you a lot of ideas, a huge bank of activities. And then she has her other teacher's guide, which is Les routines dans une classe AIM. And so she has this whole series of lovely little transition songs and ideas about classroom management, really lovely. And then you get a series of readers, all connected and integrated with the theme of the kit, in this case, La Poule Ma Boule. Some of the readers that the kids can read on their own. They're really short sentences per page. And then other readers like La Poule Ma Boule La Poule ma boule et le gros bruit is one, and then La fête du loup foufou is another one, all related to the kit, but the teacher would read those ones.
These books have been amazing. I've had these in my room for
Oh,
years, and there's some other ones that I have too.
nice.
It looks like the ones like La Poule ma boule, but there was another series of those. Was it Le Chat, Le Petit Chat?
Yes, that's right. There's a whole series for Le
And
Petit.
then Super Fille. They just love those. Like there was just something about the clarity, because it was immersion, right? But the clarity of them, they were just able to take them because so many of the books that we have are complete translations from English, right?
Yes,
So they
yes.
were able to take these and actually read them, and they actually made sense.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad that you enjoyed them. And
Yeah.
that's really lovely. Um, So we have correlations with the ministry guidelines if you're interested. We have 5 levels of training. Um, and so you can see that there. I won't go into detail. And then the training that we offer is sometimes in person, less so these days, but we do go to boards and I'm going to Victoria for a board initiated workshop. I'm going to Kelowna for our fall institute in person on the BCPD day. But a lot of them are online, like our Summer Institute, Winter Institute. We have where everyone can get together as a community, but it's all online and some board initiated online, like for Edmonton. I typically often do that every year for the past few years, and this year for another board. And then we also have the most flexible option, which is our asynchronous on-demand training for teachers who just want to do the training on their own time, on their own schedule, and then I do a follow-up question and answer period for an hour, so you can come and meet with me after you've completed the training and ask any questions that you might have had during that training there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think it works well. It gives teachers those options. So, and there's a QR code there if you're interested, or don't hesitate to write to me if you have any questions about training or even those supporting research studies that I mentioned earlier. If you want to, it's all on our website. So, if you want
Okay.
links, I can also send them to you. I
That's
have a
great.
little couple of videos to finish off today. One is this is a teacher in Victoria, BC, who's been teaching AIM. She taught AIM initially uh, grade 1 to 5 core French, and then she went and taught AIM grade 8, 7, 8 core French, and then now for a number of years she's been teaching in immersion kindergarten, and she just loves it. And she's very successful. And I just love this video. I hope you can hear it well enough. It's a little girl doing her montre et raconte, show and tell. In it, when she started, she had not a word of French. Her parents didn't speak any French. None of the kids had any French background at all. But it's nice to see how far she's come by April here, and the class as a whole.
Penelope, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Je vais le montrer. Ça fait les gros. C'est un peu long. C'est un peu long. Oui, c'est un peu long. Est-ce que tu balances ça? C'est long. Quand tu fais, c'est un peu long. Non, pas à ta classe. Je veux que tu fasses les amis, toutes les classes fermez les yeux. Toutes les personnes fermez les yeux. Toutes les personnes fermez les yeux. Pourquoi moi tu fermes? Parce que tu es mon enfant. Seulement les amis qui non, moi déjà ça, je sais que. Alors, si tu déjà sais comment on fait ça, ferme tes yeux et je veux que tu écoutes et que tu imagines que je fais. Non. Oui, je le fais avec toi.
Okay, so it's a little hard to hear, but they're all speaking only in French. They're very at ease with the language. The teacher, Karen, who is their teacher, a very, very, very good AIM teacher who uses AIM exclusively to teach French in her immersion classroom, says that her kindergarten students speak French better than the grade fives at her
Oh,
school.
wow.
So yeah, she's doing a really good job there. And just my last little video here is a grade two core French student who has French 30 minutes 4 times a week. And I mentioned earlier, I showed you the slides earlier about the retelling in writing. Well, the kids don't only do a retelling in writing, which is my main source of assessment, my main assessment piece at the end of every kit as to what the students have accomplished is their retelling in writing. But they also do an oral retelling. So they take their parents' phone or their own phone. Some of them have their own at this age. And they just, well, this little girl's sitting on her bed and she's just doing her oral retelling. So the kids have to do this activity both orally and in writing. And it really gives me so much information about their language proficiency and as well their ability to sequence, their vocabulary use, the richness of it, their pronunciation, just their syntax, their grammar, everything. It just contains so much information in this one video that they give me at the end of the kit. And yeah, so here we go, Boucle Violette by a core French student. Here we go.
Boucle Violette. Personnage. Le narrateur. Boucle Violette. Papa ours, maman ours et bébé ours. Un jour, il y a une fille qui s'appelle Boucle Violette. Boucle Violette marche dans la forêt. Les trois ours décident de marcher dans la forêt. Elles sont quittées la maison. Alors, Boucle Violette marche, et marche. Alors, elle arrive à la maison dans la forêt. Boucle Violette veut entrer dans la maison, mais elle ne peut pas. So, elle crie. Bonjour, bonjour. Est-ce que quelqu'un est là? Je m'appelle Boucle Violette et je suis très gentille. Boucle Violette n'entend pas de la voix. Alors, elle ne peut pas ouvrir la porte. Elle ouvre la fenêtre et saute dans la maison. Et elle dit, est-ce que ça c'est la chose de manger? Oui, c'est très vrai. Et elle voit une pizza de Papa Ours, un soupe pour Maman Ours et un gros biscuit pour Bébé Ours. Boucle Violette dit, oh, j'aime manger, c'est très vrai. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a ici? Il y a une pizza, de la soupe et le gros biscuit. J'aime tout ça, très vrai. J'aime la pizza, j'aime la soupe, j'aime le gros biscuit, j'aime beaucoup de choses. Alors,
Okay, so she's definitely doing a very good job of retelling the story, not repeating the sentence just as it is. She'll embellish it or change it around and add her own ideas. And so we're developing some proficiency there with the language. And yeah, it's a very, very, very good activity for students to do. I'm just noticing here, in full, she speaks for about 9 minutes in total. And where are those opportunities really where we can have students use sustained speech over that length of time? It's pretty rare. Often even in immersion classrooms, students will say one sentence at a time or, it's just be pretty short. So this is an excellent exercise for students, but it's a wonderful assessment opportunity as well for the teacher. So anyway, I'm going to just finish with this slide here. If you would like to keep in touch with AIM and find out more about it, certainly there's our website there, the AIM Facebook page. We have a wonderful community of teachers that was started by AIM teacher Pauline Gallia. And she has her AIM Facebook group, so you can go there and join another one in addition to ours. And then we have our Instagram. YouTube is probably the most interesting one because there are many videos and shorts. And there that you can just understand a little bit more about AIM if you're interested. So it has been my pleasure to speak today. I think I went over. I kept.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. My brain is just reeling now, thinking, how can I bring this back into my immersion program for September? Because it has not been most recently, because we've been so in depth with our sonograph and getting all that on off the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, my brain's going.
Oh, that's great, Angela. I'm so glad that I know you've taught AIM before. I'm glad some of it might be, a refresher for you and interesting. I'm just thrilled. So that's
Absolutely. And I love the option of the asynchronous classes too. That's a great option because, as we said, not everybody can be there at the same time as something that's online, but that's
exactly.
perfect.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And thanks so much for inviting me. I hope
Thank
teachers
you.
find this interesting and yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you've joined our communities too. So there's other spaces that they can reach out to you as well. But
Yeah.
what an honor. It's just so cool. Thank
Well,
you
it's
so much
my
for doing this, Wendy.
absolute pleasure, Angela. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Take
Yeah.
care. Thanks so much.
See you in Facebook on Facebook.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.